Good evening, everyone.
Hey, good evening.
Hello.
Hello, Jess.
Hello, hello.
Hello.
Thanks for joining us, Maziar, and everyone I see logging in now. Hi, Rachel. Thanks for joining us.
Hi there. Thank you for having me join.
All right, we'll just wait another minute or so to see if more folks show up. Thank you, everyone, for your patience and for being extra early.
Before we start, either Dr. Ramos or Jessica, can you guys please remove me as co-host?
Yes, of course. All right. Hello, everyone. We'll go ahead and get started. And while more people trickle in slowly, welcome, everyone. Today is Wednesday, June 13th, and we are currently in our June CSC meeting, which is meeting number 44. I am joined by my colleagues, Dr. Ramos, Laura Martinez, and I'm not sure if we have Dr. Gemma Cardona on yet or Vanessa Gomez, but they will be coming in briefly. I want to thank everyone for your willingness to join us for these next 2 hours. We sincerely value your ongoing commitment and your engagement in this process. It's because of you that our community will be able to develop and implement new strategies to measure air pollution and to reduce health impacts. Today's main agenda topics are designed to provide updates on action items, follow up on the proposal from last month to revise group agreements, provide district updates, and make space for DPR and other organizations to give their brief updates. So with that, I am going to share my screen and we'll go over the housekeeping items. Okay, Before we get started, please mute yourself and make sure your full name and organization are showing as your screen name. To change your screen name, click on the top right side of your picture or video. CSC members, we ask that you use the following naming convention, which is CSC and then a dash, your first and your last name. For all of those CSC members who have multiple people in their group, can you please put the names in the chat? And if you are a resident, are first and last. All other participants, we ask that you use first, last, and then your affiliation. AD or CARB for Air District or California Air Resources Board. P for general public, which I saw that some of you already did. Thank you for that. And all other organizations, you can write your org name. The meeting hosts may update your screen name during the meeting, and if you do need help, please feel free to reach out to us. Okay, this is the one in Spanish. Okay, and with that, I will pass it to Lingüística to share the interpretation instructions.
Hola, muy buenas tardes a todos. Esta junta tendrá interpretación simultánea en el lenguaje de español. Si usted necesita acceder a la interpretación para poder hacerlo, si está utilizando una computadora, entonces buscará el icono de un mundo que aparece abajo de su pantalla. Luego seleccionará español y los invito a silenciar el audio original. Si usted está por teléfono o por tableta, el proceso es un poco diferente. Buscará los 3 puntos que aparecen en la pantalla. Después seleccionarán interpretación de lenguajes. Después seleccionarán español. Una vez más, silenciar el audio original. Y cuando han acabado, arriba de la pantalla habrá un botón que dice listo o done en inglés. Presiónelo para poder escuchar en español. Y también siéntase libre de participar en español, ya que también vamos a traducir todo lo que ustedes digan en español a el inglés. Gracias. You're on mute, Jessica.
If everybody can just go ahead and do that now, so you'll be in the right channel. When I do read the group agreements, I will switch to the Spanish channel, so I want to make sure that everybody's able to hear. Okay. Virtual meeting. We ask that everybody stay on mute unless you are speaking or planning to speak. If you are participating by phone, you unmute and mute yourself by pressing *6. We ask that you raise your Zoom hand to ask a question during a presentation Q&A. You use *9 if you're by phone. Residents in the stipend program should stay for at least 75% of the meeting to be eligible for a stipend. So that means we need you to stay a minimum of 90 minutes of this 2-hour meeting. Okay, our current group agreements help achieve the meeting goals, focus on solutions, opportunities, and productive dialogue. Let everyone participate, step up and then step back. Be civil and respectful. It's okay to disagree, but please be respectful, empathetic, and civil. Stay on point and on time. Please keep comments brief and to the point. This will allow enough time for everyone to participate. Attack the problem, not the person. Respectfully challenge ideas or outcomes. Never attack the person. Honor every person's humanity and dignity. Seek common ground. Building consensus and finding shared values will help achieve the best results. Okay, today's agenda briefly. We have the welcome and introductions. We'll have review action items tracker, finalize the group agreements, SERP incentives budget discussion, standing updates, wrap up and next steps, and then we'll have public comments. Okay. And with that, I will stop sharing. All right. With that, we'll move on to the first action item. Transparency and accountability are vital for the success of AB617. Actually, my apologies. I'd like to introduce Jessica Olson. Sorry, Jess, to just give a brief introduction.
Oh, it's okay. I will be brief, and thank you, Jessica. No apology necessary. So for those that don't know me, my name is Jessica Olson. I am the Director of Community Strategies and Resources with the Air District. So I am the lead person here at the district overseeing AB617 and other community work. So I just want to welcome you all and thank you all for being a part of today's meeting. As Jessica mentioned, we do have some updates and some feedback we want from all of you on the incentives measures in the SERP, in particular, a couple of key updates and key direction on moving funds based on some feedback we've heard from you all. So we're really excited. This is something you've all asked for, and we're really eager to get going on today. And so with that, I'll pass it back to Jessica so we can get back to our meeting. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Jess. So with that, we'll really go on to our first agenda item. As you all know, we started the action item tracker to develop transparency and accountability. And actually, I'll pause. I see Bianca has her hand up.
I'm sorry. I know I am getting back on track, but I have a question in regards to changing a couple of the incentives. Does it include kind of the strategy, where the money's going to go and how is it going to be spent out? I'm asking in regards, like if the community is deciding to move money, are you also deciding kind of the way they're going to be spending it, like if it's a tune in, tune up, the new requirements that are going to be done, or for those type of projects that are going to be new in funding for them? Am I getting, my question is kind of like everywhere, but
I think I understand your question. So basically, is the community going to be involved in the how we change the funding? And in particular, your example with Tune In, Tune Up, I imagine, was an example for any of the measures. Are they going to be involved in how the funding is spent? The answer is yes to both of those. With our presentation today, we're going to give an update, much like we've given the past few meetings, but in particular, highlight a couple of areas we would like to propose moving funding from and to. And then, yes, to your point, in particular, and as a preview, one of the things we're going to talk about is residential air filtration in homes for residents, which is something you've all asked for. That would be an example of where we definitely, it's not just we're going to move it and get going, it's we're moving it and we're going to follow up with some direction from you all on how to use that funding. So I think that's your question, Bianca, and yes, that will be part of today's discussion.
So the residents would be allowed to kind of decide what could be the requirements for that the home filtration?
Exactly. We would start with the conversation about our proposal based on, there are lots of other districts that have started this. We're actually starting a pilot program valley-wide. But yes, we would look to you all and say, this is our proposal. Is there something that you want to provide feedback on how we do this? Maybe it's, we prioritize low-income households. Maybe it's we look to get certain types of air purifiers. That's exactly right. That's what we would look for the community's input on.
One of the recommendations, I know I'm heading really forward to all this, but yeah. Can it also include for sensitive receptors like elderly or children that have any respiratory problems? Because as a priority, I know that allergy season is out here, and this air out in the valley is horrible for, I'm thinking like for children or for elderlies that are dealing with these problems and could benefit from this project.
Yes, I think you're totally hitting all the right points. Yes, let's go. I think we have just a few housekeeping things. We're going to jump into the presentation. And I think to your point at the end, let's take some notes and we'll make sure Harder helps us track kind of the input and examples of what you're saying. You're totally on track with kind of the feedback we've gotten from other communities on how to prioritize. And I think it does make sense to maybe partner and get into the groups that need it the most. So I think that's a great feedback, Bianca.
Thank you, Bianca, and thank you, Jessica. I anticipate we'll have a very busy conversation when we get to that item. So looking forward to hearing everyone's feedback there. But for now, we're going to go to the action items tracker. I just want to continue to acknowledge the Air District for working on those action items, moving them forward, and keeping us all informed of where they are currently in the process. With that, I will pass it to Song.
Thank you so much, Jessica. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Can you guys see the action items okay? Perfect. Okay. So just to go over the action items from the last meeting, which was May 9th, just a couple items here. The first one was to use the tracker as a template to develop a new process to review unused SERP funds by measure and to make decisions on how to prioritize allocation of funds. And the district updated a chart, and we are going to share more information about this in the budget presentation, as well as just a quick reminder that CSC members can always follow the progress of each measure on our tracker, and it's updated monthly. And you can use this link here, or you can also see it at the main page. I can show it. Let me show it to you real quickly. And this is the tracker here, and you can always see it on the main Shafter community page. You can see the English one as well as the Spanish here as well. So that is the tracker. Let me go back. And then let's go down to the next action items. Lorena with Caltrans will communicate with Caltrans engineers and upper management to identify how to address the implementation of new sidewalks in Shafter and bring a proposed budget to the CSC. Right now, she shared the information with their team, and we are hoping to hear back from her. She wasn't able to make it to today's meeting, so just wanted to update the CSC on that. The next item is that the SERP has funding for rail car movers and switchers, which are diesel equipment that only operate in the Shafter area. The AD will share a map of where these are located. We are still in the process of getting more information, and we can talk about this a little bit more during our budget discussion later. The next one is Brian Dodds to reach out to Richland School District to identify the possibility of providing an update on the infrastructure stage and the number of buses they will require. The district is connecting with Richland School District to gather the info that was requested, and the hope is that we will get some representatives from the school district to attend a future meeting that unfortunately they couldn't make it tonight. And then we wanted to update another item here this was from the March 14th meeting. This is the district will release a new request for proposals for urban greening incentives measures. And we sent out an email announcing the release of the urban greening RFP this morning. And you can click on this link as well as the grants and application and project plans website. And I will go ahead and do that now. And you can see the information right here. So this is the main page for the grants application and projects plan. And this is right there front and center. This is a proposal. Here's the application and the Shafter boundary map. And then that's pretty much it for, oh, sorry, a couple more. Let's see. Oh, these are the old ones. These are, I think I already went through these. So that's it. Unless there are any questions. Oh, I see Linda, yes.
On the urban greening RFP, do you guys send that out or how does that work?
So we sent it out, but please, if you want to, if you know, which I know you do, Linda, folks that are probably, want to apply or need to apply, you can let us know and we can send it, or we're happy to have you forward it on. We posted it to the site and sent out a link, so we can also give you the link. So however you think it's best. You can even put in the chat, Linda, if you want us to do it, if you want us to actually attach an email or just send the links, you let us know and we can give you all of that information.
Okay, thank you. I was just curious.
Mm-hmm.
I do not see any other hands. I will go ahead and move on to the next agenda item, which is to finalize the group agreements. Just a reminder, I will be transitioning over to the Spanish channel. If you have not done so already, please select English so that you can hear the back translation. ¿Sí? Anabel.
Sí, buenas tardes.
Tardes.
Sí nos podrían mandar un mapa de dónde tienen planeado poner las zonas verdes para nosotros tener un folleto claro dónde es donde van a ponerlos. Nosotros sabemos dónde se necesita, ¿verdad? Las orillas de los rancheros, pero queremos si nos pueden mandar un folleto para ver dónde van a poner las zonas verdes. Y otra pregunta, nosotros aquí en nuestro paquete no recibimos la aplicación que nos acaban de enseñar, que acaba de pasar ahorita la aplicación.
Jessica.
Eso es todo.
Gracias. Jessica?
Okay, so the two things. One is that what we released a request for people to apply to be like the administrator, the group that's going to plant trees. So we as a CSC will actually work to identify who the best applicant is to plant the trees and where they want it. We can use our role as a CSC to help identify where the best places are. I know we've done that work early on with this committee. So it's up to provide. Oh, maybe I don't know if we can mute really quickly. Perfect, thank you. So actually to Annabelle's question, we can definitely work to provide that input to the application or the person who's applying or whoever applies to the RFP. The second question, was that related to the RFP when you say application? I'm a little confused by when you say, Annabelle, that we didn't send an application. Are you talking about the proposal for urban greening projects?
Disculpe, cuando dicen soy Ana Valle, con referente a lo que dijo Anabel, que no mandaron la aplicación, sí, esa aplicación es para compañías que van a agarrar para plantar los árboles o zonas verdes, o lo vamos a hacer como comité, o van a agarrar una compañía para hacer las zonas verdes.
Great question. Yes, it would be for I don't know, it could be a company or a community group or other project partners to apply to plant. So we won't know until people apply. It is for someone to take that and then do the urban greening work in consultation with the CSC. We actually are requiring them to work with the CSC to identify zones. And so it would be, for example, if there's like a tree foundation or a CBO or an organization that you know or that you work with, or an organization of residents that want to apply, that can all be, those are all eligible to apply for the, to plant the trees.
No, dile que fuera gente de aquí de Chapter. Pero los están oyendo ya no. Sí. Pero las personas que van a plantar árboles y van a agarrar tienen que ser personas que lo van a hacer de aquí de Chapter, no van a venir de afuera a hacerlo, ¿verdad?
Right. So yes. So and maybe I'll clarify. So it would be someone, we at the district aren't like tree experts. So it'd be someone to administer the program, and then like individuals apply to have a tree planted in their yard. So say Ana Valle or Annabelle wanted a tree in their yard, they would work, we would select as a committee, whoever would be the administrator, the main grant person who would administer and give trees away. And then they could apply to this person, to this group, say I'm just gonna, a tree kern or tree shafter, if that was, an example of a fake group. They would apply there and then they could get a tree. So it's one person to essentially administer and give away the trees, to plant the trees, to do all the work, or to work with community groups to do that.
Entonces, las zonas verdes que nosotros queríamos para que atraparan el polvo, no va a ser como nosotros la pedíamos, porque los árboles los van a poner en diferentes partes y nosotros sabemos que todas las orillas de los rancheros son los que sacuden los pistachos y los almendros y el polvo se va a la carretera donde trafican los carros. Entonces un árbol no va a tapar.
Right.
Un árbol no va a tapar. Entonces, si ustedes han visto por Lerdo o en diferentes ranchos, la planta laurel es esponjosa y tupida. Se pone a la orilla del fil y ese no deja salir el polvo. Yo sé que los árboles son importantes y limpian el aire, pero no tapan el polvo que se sacude de los pistachos. Entonces hay dos cosas que están confundidas. Eso es lo que quisiera que aclarara.
Yes, great point. So Annabelle is talking about the difference between urban greening, which is what we just released, and vegetative barriers. So vegetative barriers are what Annabelle just described, where they block the pollution, they stop. From our discussions with you all were not interested in having us allocate funding for vegetative barriers because we didn't want to pay for the farmers to then plant those trees and block the pollution. That was the feedback we got when we proposed moving funds into that program. This is the other program, which is urban greening, which was requested by the CSC when we started the CERP process, which is for planting trees in and around the community. But to Annabelle's point, there is still an option, and we can have this discussion as a community. We do have a vegetative barriers measure in the CERP, but we received feedback a couple different times not to use CERP funding for it. So that is not what this is. So this is not the vegetative barriers to be planted on property of the farmers. This is urban greening to be planted in the community where residents live.
I know.
Entonces los fondos del AB617 que son para la comunidad, ¿no se pueden usar para eso?
Oh, no, they definitely can be used for that. If you all at the CSC want to be used for vegetative barriers, we can. I believe we had this discussion probably like 6 months ago, and we got direction from you all not to fund. And I'm happy to go back and review all those notes, but to not fund the farmers to plant the trees on, along. But we're happy if things can evolve, and if the committee wants, we can move funds. We're going to talk a little bit later about some funds we think we can move to other things. We can certainly move funds if we as a CSC want to plant those barriers that block the dust that Annabelle just described.
Perdón, una pequeñita. Entonces, para entender, por ejemplo, si yo como vivo en Shafter, puedo solicitar que yo quiero un árbol y me lo darían, ¿es lo correcto? Perfecto, para decirle a las personas que si quieren un árbol, agarrar los nombres y alguien nos va a dar los árboles para sembrar en casa. Perfecto.
Yes, we will work and we'll make sure that whoever applies to be the person that gives the trees away, we'll make sure we as a CSC work to make sure that's part of their, and that process is easy and that it's part of their program to make sure that people, if they want and they can maintain the trees, that they can get a tree in Chapter.
Mi árbol se lo comieron las hormigas de enfrente. Mi árbol se lo comieron las hormigas y yo necesito un árbol.
Solo quiero tomar una pausa brevemente. Creo que tenemos que, como grupo, dar las definiciones, ¿verdad? Porque pienso que en este ejemplo se confundió el enverdecimiento con las barreras vegetativas y no sé si para el grupo necesiten como unas definiciones para saber cuáles son las propuestas, porque creo que sí hubo un poquito de confundimiento por ahí y quiero que todos estén claros y sepan lo que está pasando para que muévanos las cosas frente, ¿verdad? Está en mute, perdón.
I think Annabelle.
Que gracias, gracias, está explicado.
Gracias. Y miro que Gustavo y Bianca tienen la mano levantada, pero solamente quería regresar al comentario de Anabel sobre el mapa y solamente quiero clarificar, ¿aún necesita el mapa donde van a poner los árboles o ya no? Esa sería la pregunta para las barreras vegetativas.
Sí queremos, por favor. Sí queremos. No puedo poner el micrófono.
Sí, sí la escucho.
Oh, ok.
Ok, muchas gracias. Solamente quería que le respondieran a su pregunta y su comentario. Muchas gracias. Ok, entonces esa va a ser una orden de acción que vamos a hacer. Gustavo, si quiere dar su comentario.
So I think it was just to follow up the comments of Annabelle and the group. I think it's not clear for the two. My understanding is that you sent today the request for applications for, for the, I think, plant trees within the city or within the map of 617. But I think the confusion is still if the request for applications was also sent for the barriers, which looks like that's what they are interested. I think you need to clarify that and clarify, that if that's the case, that the applications were sent only for the trees as they are thinking, to plant within the map within the city. I think that if that's clarified, that will be great, even for moving on the agenda, because we are going to talk about seeing if we move funds from one project to another. So I think clarifying this information may help to make decisions on the budget. Thank you.
And yes, just to uplift what Gustavo said, this is just for the urban greening. We did not release an RFP for vegetative barriers because there's no CERP funding right now allocated to vegetative barriers based on committee's input and direction. To Gustavo's point, if we do want to make that change as a group, we certainly are welcome to. But yes, it is just right now the one that's planting in and around the community. And so that's the only thing that's open right now is that RFP.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I think if you can also clarify my understanding is that I think a group or agency will need to apply for the grant, and that entity will be responsible for coordinating that project. I think if you can clarify that also.
Yes.
If someone applies or an entity applies and what the process may be if that's the case.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I can clarify that right now. So to Gustavo's point, an entity or a group is probably a better way to put it. So earlier when Annabelle and Ana Valle asked it, yes, it is a group or one particular entity that would apply, and then it's through them that we would do tree planting projects in the community. I think the idea of having a map where maybe we as a committee identify priorities is a really good step to give to that entity, if that makes sense. And maybe that's an action item or maybe a clarification to that action item, Jessica, is not that we will provide a map, but we will work with the committee on a map. I think would be a great next step. And it's in the RFP, but I'll let you know that this entity will be selected as a group. So when they apply, we will come to you all and say, hey, here's who's all applied based on their qualifications and what they've told us they want to do in the community and how they want to work with the community. You all help give us recommendations on who to select. So we'll make it an open process. It's part of the RFP that we'll just kind of keep it. So thanks, Gustavo.
Perfecto. Bianca y Linda y después Anabel.
I have a question, sorry. I have a question in regards to the green the trees. Who's going to be responsible of irrigating the trees, or is it going to be part of the funding? And for the green barriers, that was an issue that was happening, and that's why they were sorry. That was one of the problems that we were having, that none of the girls wanted to take responsibility of irrigating those barriers, the green barriers. So I'm wondering if we do go back and talk about these green barriers, can we also have that discussion of who's going to be responsible of actually taking care of the trees? Another question that I do have is for the application for the trees, is there going to be specific trees that have to be planted, or is it any trees that anybody, that residents would want to, or community would want to plant in their area? I'm just wondering, because if they decide to do a fruit tree instead of doing a pine or something that could help the air quality to be better, instead of, or I'm just curious, like what kind of trees is it required to do?
Hi, Bianca. This is Todd DeYoung, the Director of Grants and Incentives. Those are some really good questions, and those are sort of like fundamental to these types of programs and something that we're still kind of working through. In terms of watering, yeah, that's the big question, right? And so I believe, and I will correct myself if I'm wrong, and I'll go back and look at this, but I believe that at least some initial funding for watering may be included in the RFP. But you know, that's going to be the responsibility, you know, to secure long-term maintenance of these trees. Obviously, no one wants to see this investment, you know, die after a couple of years. So, you know, that's going to be part of the winning proposal, is going to be a plan for ongoing maintenance of these trees. So that'll be one of the things that we're looking at in terms of scoring and ranking the proposals that we do get. Are, you know, we want to make sure that we see that there is a plan for long-term care and maintenance of these trees and vegetative barriers. In terms of what sorts of vegetation is required, there are preferred sorts kinds of vegetation and types of vegetation that make for good barriers. But there is some flexibility in there in terms of the types of trees that are planted. Obviously, we want something that is going to survive and flourish in the environment in which it's planted. So there is a very specific list of those types of vegetation. And those are in the materials that folks have to use, you know, the various tree planting software and you know, things like that folks are required to use when they're putting together their proposals, would include an identification of the types of vegetation that are going to be required. So there are some limitations, but there's also some choices there. You know, you're not stuck with one specific type of vegetation, but there are some limitations as to what will do well and what will survive.
I have another question. I'm sorry that I wanted to add. Are you guys reaching out to schools? I know that children's have like community events. I'm sorry. They have community events out there and could use their community service as one of these projects. Maybe a teacher could take the project on hand and use it for their students. I'm just wondering and curious if you have reached out to any of the schools out there.
I think, you know, community involvement is something that's a kind of a big part of this program. And to the extent that, you know, those interested parties are going to be reaching out and collaborating with the community, not only schools, but other community organizations, and really get the buy-in from the community on these types of projects. I think it's critical. I'm not sure if we've specifically reached out to the schools for this specific proposal, but I think community engagement and community involvement is another big area that we're going to be looking at when we choose a successful applicant.
And I think too, Bianca, what I mentioned earlier, and definitely something we want to keep in mind, is we can give that feedback when we select the applicant. A, we can look and see how, what they provide into that, but in B, as we look to implement the projects, we specifically do the outreach either with them or for them, or make sure that they do that. Technically, for applicant eligibility, a school themselves could apply to this funding. So.
Suena como que Bianca respondieron. Sorry, perdón. Jessica, ¿ibas a responder?
Sorry, maybe I missed something. I thought I answered. Maybe I missed the interpretation of something.
Solamente quería estar segura que habías terminado de hablar. Miro que Linda tiene su mano alzada.
I just wanted to bring up, Jessica, I know that you were just mentioning for residents to get trees, but in the original program plan, it was written in that the Grimway, or now Grow Academy, was interested in trees. They're a new school. They have interest. They would like trees for the children. And also Richland School District would like trees. Those are fenced in areas where they have existing water infrastructure to help facilitate the tree growth, et cetera. The other program plan was to put trees at Los Angeles Park for residents that use that park. A lot of the kids use that for sports activities. A lot of the families in that area walk around the park. There isn't a lot of shading. There was a kern tree project where trees were planted there years ago, and unfortunately the trees were stolen. And that is a big community area that would like trees as long as the city of Shafter is in agreement, because that also, again, has infrastructure for sprinkler systems already. As far as community service groups, there are some in town, like we can reach out to Kiwanis, Rotary, maybe Lions to help reduce costs and do some tree planting. But those were some of the main ones that were on the original program plan that went to you and then up to CARB. And I just wanted to remind everyone about those two, that those were kind of the first priorities.
Yeah, thank you, Linda. And yes, to Linda's point, there is a suggestion in the RFP that lists exactly what Linda mentioned. So it mentions schools, it mentions the sports complex, it mentions Veterans Park, and it mentions a couple of different cross streets. One is Highway 43 and Beach Avenue. One is Central 43 north of town, Tulare and Fresno Avenue, and the other is Shafterton 99 via Lerdo. So lots of great input that we've heard already. And to Linda's point, those were included in the original project plan that we kind of suggested to CARB, and they are in here as suggestions. So I wonder if we can start with those in that mapping feedback project, and then see if there's any more kind of support we want to give to any sort of applicant as to where the priorities could be. So thank you, Linda.
Will that also change if we can get the vegetarian, I can't say that word.
Yes, I got you.
Barriers back, because, driving down Lerdo this year, there were times where I had to slow down or stop because the dust was bad across. So, I mean, can that money, go to that one and not take away from the urban greening because
I would say if the committee is interested in funding vegetative barriers, we would not take from urban greening. We would probably take from some of, when I get to the presentation, probably take from some other measures where we're not seeing movement. So that would be up to you all as a steering committee. But that would be our recommendation. So yeah, we wouldn't take any money out of greening. It would probably be from another one that isn't fully funded or, isn't moving.
Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. And we have Annabelle. Here. Oh, okay. Yes, you are muted.
Espérame. Las plantas que yo sugiero son de las más baratas y de las más extender. Son lo más barato que hay en planta. No sería tanto el gasto que se puede hacer. Y si se sacan esos fondos, que no se los den a los rancheros para que ellos lo pongan, porque entonces sería darles dinero otra vez a los rancheros. O sea, queremos algo que se vea que es para la comunidad y que la comunidad lo hace y le sirve. Porque de otra manera, pues nosotros no estamos viendo que se haga algo que la comunidad ha pedido más que lo que son las máquinas de cortar zacate. Por favor, hay que poner énfasis en eso. No se va a gastar, no se va a invertir tanto dinero porque es de lo más corriente que hay de esas plantas. Es el laurel, no sé si la mayoría lo conoce. Está en diferentes colores, hay blanco, rojo y rosa. Y abunda mucho, con una sola plantita abunda 6 pies, 8 pies. Sería que pusieran énfasis en eso, por favor. Y sobre los árboles, es muy necesario que sí se ponga en parques que apenas están comenzando. Como dijo Linda, hay parques para acá donde la gente que no tiene fondos para ese parque, que van los niños libres a jugar ahí sin pagar cuota ni nada, esos niños también son comunidad y también necesitan árboles ahí. Luego, si ustedes gustan, yo les puedo dar la dirección de ese parque. Felipa, ¿quiere decir algo?
Sí, mi nombre es Felipa Trujillo y así habíamos pedido los árboles para donde están las huertas de almendra, porque cuando fumigan, ese veneno se va a la tierra y con el tiempo se hace un microbio y con eso da la fiebre del valle. Es por eso que queremos los árboles en la Lerdo Avenida y en la Chapter, en la Lerdo yendo para el 99 y en la Lerdo yendo para el 5. Es donde hay muchas huertas de almendra.
Es todo.
Thank you.
Thank you for that last comment. I do have a comment that Steve posted in the chat, and I'd like to read it out before I get to you, Gustavo. He said, agree, would like a map to help with where urban greening provides maximum value, at least in public spaces. No comment on private spaces. Or city would be willing to help with the map in public spaces where city already waters, we would water, and then xeriscaping would be prioritized. That was his comment in the chat. So thank you for that comment. Go ahead, Gustavo.
Thank you. Yeah, but I think what I'm hearing is that I think the green barriers are important to reduce dust and pollution. And at the same time, I'm hearing that, you know, residents don't want money to be used for that. But and I've been playing with this idea for some time, and also to propose it to Arvin Lamont for you, Earth District folks, to start thinking on that. How about if those growers that got money to buy new tractors commit to plant those barriers? I don't think it will be too much to ask them if they already were benefited by getting money from 617. I think it will be a good giving back to the community by them planting those green barriers. I think what Annabelle shared about laureles, I don't know its name in English, but I think that will help, and that will be, I think, something that community will really appreciate from growers. You know, if they got a tractor, they plant some trees and barriers, I think that will be very good, you know, give and take with growers.
That's definitely a concept, and I think something that we definitely, it sounds like when you want to talk about vegetative barriers, maybe schedule it for another meeting so we can have maybe this brainstorm session about what to do, because I've heard a few folks want to fund it. I've heard a lot of folks want to not fund it, but obviously no matter what, there's an interest in having it, right? And so Gustavo's trying to come up with creative solutions. I do know there's another layer, I think a lot of us know it, and it's about water scarcity. So folks that are farming already have to cut back on their water use for the crops that they grow that provide the food. And so if they have to then plant trees, I think that's maybe some of the feedback. So I'm curious, you know, maybe we do have a discussion, because I do appreciate trying to come up with creative solutions and keeping this conversation open. So with that, Jess, I know we have some good action items on next steps for urban greening. It sounds like we definitely need a new discussion on vegetative barriers at a future meeting. And I'm happy to pass it back to you, or and maybe just take some lead on if we're going to just jump into ours, or if you'd like to, as a committee, you know, move forward on the.
Yes. Thank you so much for that. I would like to propose that we table the group agreements to the next meeting. I feel like everybody is really engaged today and you all have a lot to say, and I don't want to detract from that. So as a committee, if you all agree to table the group agreements, we are more than happy to just jump into the next item. How does everyone feel about that? Thumbs up. Amy, can we do thumbs up as consensus? Okay. Oh, I see a lot of thumbs up. Okay. All right. So let's not waste any more time. And Jess, I will pass it on to you.
Sorry, Jessica,
Oh,
one little question before we get transition. We have a Unique Lopez. If you could name yourself. Unique Lopez.
Oh, I think she's from the Wonderful Company.
Okay, perfect. Oh, I got cut off on my end. Thank you.
All right, so SERP incentives budget discussion. Let's do this, Jess.
Awesome, and we're really already in it, and I just appreciate, I agree with Jessica. This is the exact feedback and forward momentum we want. We were really excited, and we're excited that you're all engaged on the release of that RFP. I agree with Annabelle, we need to get this going. This is a visible part of the community emissions reduction program, our planting trees, and that will certainly be in addition to the barriers. However we get that done in the community, it's really a priority for you all. I'm going to share my screen. This is very similar to what we've shared in the past, but I'm going to pause a couple times and get some feedback. And then the very last slide is really our discussion slide on how to move funding, in particular to a new measure. And that's what I previewed for us in the beginning, which is indoor air filtration for residents. And so as you already saw, I do have Todd here with me. And so he'll answer any detailed questions I can't answer about the incentives measures. So my first two slides are just sort of a description of what we're going to talk about in this, which are three kind of questions. So the first two are on this one, which are kind of the funding questions we've heard from you all. The first is just transparency on implementation progress. We now, for the past 4 meetings, have shared the same tables with updates. Plus, of course, we send out to you all the tables with the implementation tracker. But we think it's a really good practice, and we hope you agree that you always know where we're at with each measure. And so we're hoping that today we can dive a little deeper on a couple of things, and that is clarifying timelines and the funding deadlines set by the state for spending the incentives. So on slide 4, we're going to talk about the status. On slide 6, we're going to talk about the explicit expectations on meeting the required incentives funding deadlines for the different buckets of measures. The last one, and the one that we've talked about the most today already, and definitely some feedback we want, it will not be the only time we get this feedback, it's just the first in a while, is process on soliciting guidance from CSC on shifting funding as needs are identified. So on slide 7, starting on slide 7, there's a couple of slides where we're going to ask for your direction regarding moving funding from a measure and to another measure. And sometimes it's based on timelines, sometimes it's based on the fact that at the Air District, we can't find someone to partner with us and take advantage. Or maybe there's some other issue because maybe the entity already got funds and we are no longer needed. So I have this question here. Maybe think about it as we go through. As we're going through this slide and this presentation, is there something that's missing in your mind that will help you clarify? So after I present the information, maybe there's something that I didn't talk about or some other piece of the puzzle that will help you or people that you work with understand where we're at with the funding. So this first, it's just intended, it's a long list just to kind of enumerate. We're going to go over each of these. So it's really just to show you where we're at with approved and pre-approved. So reminding you that project plans are what we submit to CARB, the California Air Resources Board, to get approval to spend the funding. So we have a lot that were approved ahead of time. And those are all the ones that you've seen us starting to fund already. Some of them we funded pretty successfully. Some of them we haven't been so successful, and we want to talk to you about those. We have a bunch that we've worked with you all on and worked with CARB on getting approval for. So that's all in this column. We have a few that we've recently submitted to CARB. Some of them we're still working on with CARB. Some of them we just submitted, and we'll go over those in a second. And then we have several that we're still working on drafting because we have a lot of incentives measures. And so you can see as we move them all to try to get to this bucket, it's going to take some time and some work with you all. So it's just kind of a snapshot of where we're at in the process with CARB approval. So these are the ones that were in. I'm going to go back really quickly, not to make you dizzy. Everything in this column is going to be on the next slide. So everything you see in this column right here is on this next slide. And the ones in yellow are the ones we're going to highlight today, but we're happy to talk about any of the other ones, of course. And so we've already talked at length about how, of course, as you've seen, and it's just because they are pre-approved in the CARB guidelines, it was faster for us to spend the money and everything in this list because we didn't have to wait for that approval. And so that's why the ones that are pre-approved here have moved a little bit further than some. We are going to ask you a little bit today, and there's a slide on it. So I'll pause when we get to that slide. We're going to give you a little update on the electric school buses because we still have 7 that we're working with the school district on. Thank you, Amy. And then we have an update for you on the rail car movers and switchers in particular. And maybe I'll stop here to just have that update. Some of the feedback we heard from you all on this measure in particular was we wanted to know, where are the locomotive switchers that we want to fund? Where are those prioritized locations? So we've been working and we've been reaching out to operators in the community, and we have actually yet to find project partners that want to partner with us on this measure. So that is already telling us, A, because there maybe aren't captive or what we call fleets or switchers that stay within the boundary that are old enough that we found through our work to be replaced, or that folks aren't interested in replacing. And so that is funding that we've identified that we want feedback from you all on whether we, A, work with you all to reach out to, if you know folks in the boundary that have a rail car mover or switcher, which are older, dirty locomotives that stay in the community. We want you, A, to help us get the word out about it, or B, help us direct and say, you know what, we're not going to fund those, and this is now funding we can use for other measures that need funding. And when I say other measures, we'll talk about it a little bit later, but that can include either indoor air filtration for the home. That can include, if we ever choose to fund vegetative barriers, or to increase funding, maybe if we find that we're oversubscribed, meaning we don't have enough funding for something else. I'll pause there really briefly to see if there's any feedback on that update about rail car movers and switchers. Yes.
Yeah, how's it going? Good evening, everyone. I'm trying to think back to see if I remember, but did we ever do like an assessment for the rail car mover switchers of how much locations within the 7-mile radius actually had them, and like what would be the potential?
So we're still in the works, but as we've gone through and started reaching out to companies that are like along rail lines, we haven't heard feedback from them on their like whether they have a rail car mover that's captive, like, or a switcher locomotive in the boundary. So far, although we're still working on that, and our direction from you all can be, let's wait until we finish that assessment to make a decision. That's okay with us. But so far, we haven't found any captive ones that would be available for this type of incentive.
Right on. So for example, if there's none or one or very few rail car movers and switchers, and there seems to be an allotment of 4 million, then potentially that 4 million could be allocated to another project given the approval of the entire CSC, correct?
Exactly.
Got it. And then I just see on the chat here that that most of the transit of rail moves through and doesn't say, so maybe that's something that we can look at as well.
So yeah, so a switcher isn't a transit piece. It is, and maybe John, I don't know if he's raising his hand to help explain this as well. A switcher is usually used like within a local rail yard, or at maybe there's an industry that has, like, they're moving rail cars onto longer haul lines. And so yes, to Steve's point, this is not for a locomotive, it's for like a rail car mover that switches. It's usually an older unit that no longer does long haul. All right, thanks, Gus.
All right, Gustavo?
Yeah, I think just following up on these ideas, I think I understand, I heard in the past prior meetings that, the green barriers, especially those to reduce dust and pesticides going into the communities or roads, that I think especially, the community members, residents that don't want to give the money to growers. I understand that, but if assuming that we approve, funds for these kind of projects, the local locomotives, movers, we will be giving the money to a company. One is called a company or manufacturing company or wherever, and the other one will be the grower, but it's the same to me. And I believe that, and just for consideration, of the voting members here moving forward and considering switching funds, but to me it looks like I think the green barriers will really benefit the community, and the residents will see, easily identify the benefit, like when Felipa, shared, that in her backyard, she's a neighbor to an orchard, and, planting a line of trees to reduce the exposure to pesticides and dust. That will be something substantial for the residents to see it, and just to consider for consideration, I think moving forward, how can we fund those projects that the residents will be, I think, and I will also mention is what is really coming to the community. And I think seeing those barriers to me is people will be able to see it. And I see the benefit here in Shafter, in Arvin Lamont. I sometimes when I go on the harvesting times, I have to stop because you cannot see on the road, and that's going to the community. So just for consideration, it's I understand the concept of the concern of residents not giving money to growers, but here we will be doing the same, giving money to companies, and maybe more, more rich than growers.
I wondered too, I know we'll go to Annabelle next, but I'm kind of hearing, and I just want folks to know ahead of the rest of this conversation, I think today we're getting lots of great ideas. And I wonder if we establish today as sort of we're generating concepts, and then we will put those concepts to paper, send it out to everyone so they can assess them. And then we can maybe make decisions at our next meeting so that we as a group don't feel like, oh my gosh, we have to make a decision officially today, but we can hear some of the concepts and then make the decision, because I'm hearing some really good discussions around some moving of the funds.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes, the other part is, I think in the prior meetings, we also mentioned, moving funds to sidewalks and all of that. So just want to remind ourselves that that's an area that is also important for the community.
Thank you for your comment, Gustavo. Anabel.
Sí, mi pregunta es, si no tuviéramos este proyecto de AB617, las compañías que tienen esas máquinas abandonadas ahí, ¿las hubieran seguido teniendo? ¿Por qué se les tiene que dar? Es mi pregunta. ¿Por qué? Si ellos ya las tenían, ellos ya tenían eso, ellos ya lo usaron, ya lo utilizaron, es para su beneficio.
Ya sacaron dinero.
¿Para qué? ¿Por qué tenemos que darles el AB617 dinero para eso? Ahora, ¿por qué CARP decide en ocasiones separar dinero para dar cuando la prioridad de la comunidad no está siendo cubierta? ¿Por qué tenemos que pedir fondos o que nos ayuden si el dinero era para la comunidad, no para las compañías? Y se nos da tanto obstáculo para unas vallas de plantas corrientes. No estoy enojada, señoras, no estoy enojada, simplemente no cabe en mi mente pensar qué es lo que está pasando, No pedimos tanto, no pedimos millones ni miles. A mí serán miles, pero no millones como las compañías de los rancheros, del petróleo, de compañías que ahora se están beneficiando de este programa. Y la comunidad no se beneficia, tiene que mendigar un poquito para que nos den. ¿Por qué? No entiendo. Llevamos tanto con lo mismo y salimos a fin de cuentas con compañías que ni siquiera sabíamos que existían. Aquí no hay ni una compañía que tenga un material abandonado más que la de roof. No hay otra compañía que tenga maquinaria de tren. Solo la de roof, porque ahí se lleva el combustible para hacer los chingos, para hacer los techos. Es la única y no van a encontrarla. Entonces, ¿qué es lo que está pasando? Yo en ocasiones les voy a contar mi sentir. En ocasiones yo ya quiero tirar la toalla con esto. Yo ya quiero dejar esto. Yo ya me cansé de que siempre tengamos que estar pidiendo, mendigando para nuestra comunidad y los demás se benefician con esto. Discúlpenme que les hable así, pero es que ya tanto dar y dar para otros, siendo que la comunidad es la que necesita. Discúlpenme, gracias.
No apology necessary. And one thing that Gus has asked me to do, and I realize that we don't have a good, I don't have it pulled up, and I'm going to pull up something that's a little bit of a version of it, but we need to do a better job, is this is a community emissions reduction plan or program. And so the reason that we have a balance of resident incentives and incentives for folks that have higher polluting industries is that we're trying to accelerate, meaning get as much as we can, as fast as we can, emissions reductions. And so, of course, that in the SERP that we put together, the target was to get the biggest polluters out and off of the streets, right? So the target, as we all know, right, the polluters are the big locomotives or switchers in this case, the trucks, the dust from the almond harvesting, the traffic going down Lerdo Highway. And so all of those, that's the reason those are all in there, because we need to reduce the emissions to help the folks that are in Shafter. So by the base of how much a harvester costs, or a locomotive switcher costs, or a truck costs, they just cost more per unit than a car or a fireplace or a lawnmower. Because as you all know, that the lawnmower isn't the reason we have poor air quality, right? We all know that it's the bigger heavy duty sources. So we have a balance in there, because we also heard from you all, of course, that we want the residents to benefit from this, not just, of course, getting clean air, because that's the ultimate goal, right, is to clean up the air, to replace everything with the cleanest available electric technologies, but also to have the residents benefit by having new trees and electric cars and electric lawnmowers. So that's why there's a balance. We have a target that we put in the SERP to get NOx, which is an emissions, so, something that comes out of a tailpipe usually, and PM reductions, because those are the drivers for all of the health impacts of air pollution. And so the main source of all of those reductions in your SERP were the reducing ag burning, we're getting low dust harvesters, we're getting trucks off the road, and in this case, we were aiming to get locomotive switchers. What we're hearing from a lot of you, and what we have agreed based on availability, is that maybe we take that 4 million and we do something else with it. We help support, to Gustavo, some other projects that are priorities. We've suggested that maybe we move some of it. We could split it up. We maybe suggested moving some of it to a new measure that you all suggested to us, which is getting air purifiers in homes to protect your health immediately. We don't have to wait for the emissions reductions. So there's a lot of things we're looking to you all to help direct some of these funds. But at the end of the day, we do need to reduce emissions, and that is why there is a balance. And like I said, it's just a truck is really expensive compared to a car, compared to some trees. So that's why, we're aiming for 200 cars and only, 10, 20 trucks. But the 20 trucks are going to cost way more than 200 cars. So that's why there's that, it looks like that discrepancy. It's because the heavy duty stuff is the one that's actually hurting the air. So we're trying to strike that balance. And one thing that Gus asked me to do, and we will put together and we will send out to you all, is for each measure, like a little thermometer of how much the pollution is being impacted by that particular measure and how much we are striving for with that funding. That way you can really see which one has the most impact on you all. And that's a promise from us to get out to you all, so it's more visual.
Thank you for addressing that concern, Jess. And I just wanted to go back to Annabelle's comment before I call on Gustavo and move the conversation forward. I just wanted to really acknowledge almost that exhaustion of why are we here? Like, why do we keep doing this? And when we welcome you every month, that is exactly why we're welcoming you and thanking you for doing the work that you're doing. The CSC and the Air District are in a partnership to improve our air quality. And it's not just Shafter, right? We all share, we all share the air. Shafter, Bakersfield, Arbin, Lamont. I mean, we're all sharing, and the work that you're tasked with as a CSC is daunting. And just thank you all for continuing to do the work that you do, and the Air District for pushing the work forward. And that is my piece. So thank you. And Gustavo, with that, I will pass it off to you.
And I'm sorry if I'm talking ahead of the agenda, but I think since we have a couple of people here from the city of Shafter, I want to make this comment. In reviewing the SERPs prior, prepping for this meeting, one of the things that got my attention is the funds that are allocated for bike lines. I don't know where in the process we are there. I think it's LU5. Where are we? And I think because I was making my notes that we will go to outreach to the city and asking them to, help us use those funds, with the Annabelle's group. But since we have, at least a couple of people that is recognized from the city, where are we there? Is it already approved? And I think thinking about that, why we are waiting so much. I think if all the frustrations I think from residents is that they don't see things happening in the community. I understand, that what you mentioned, Jessica, tackling, those other polluters, the machines and tractors and everything. I got that, but I think the frustration from the community is that they don't see much happening in the city. Yeah. And I was thinking, those 4 million added to this million to build bike lines, that can be public lighting, which a lot of streets don't have lighting, and building the bike lanes, and building the sidewalks if there are no sidewalks there. It's not only about painting a line for bikes, because I've seen that here in my neighborhood and in other communities. It's not about just painting a line, it's making the improvements that are needed in those streets. So the lines don't disappear a year after, that making that infrastructure change. So so we can have real bike lanes for many, many years. But I just wanted to mention that, if there is something that the city needs support from the community, let us know. But I think that's one of the areas that we can work to help residents see, investment in their community. But I believe the city will agree that maybe those 4 millions added to the bike lines will be a good idea.
I'm sure Gustavo is coming up with so many great options.
This is Steve Esselman from the city. I'm the planning director. I'd actually like to say that we're actually going to purchase a spray truck. That'll be for lines, but it'll also be for creating bike lanes and constantly maintaining those lines on the road. Another thing we could probably talk about is the idea of some sort of a regional connection to other cities. I think the city of Bakersfield right now is utilizing the Friant-Kern alignment to build a multimodal, which means bikes, pedestrians. There might be some opportunities there to extend that lane north into Shafter. But I agree. Right now, currently, the city of Shafter has no pedestrian or bike plan. Never has. It needs to be developed, and that takes time. I certainly agree that there needs to be more modes of transportation than just cars. Now, the rail is the rail, and it's always been there, and it'll always be there, and we have to work with them. But I think there are other opportunities to increase the ability to move people and bikes around the city. So anyway, that's kind of a snapshot of where the city is currently.
That was so helpful, Steve. And I'll just say from the district's perspective, in terms of moving things forward, we have to, and we're hoping to very shortly, submit the project plan that allows us to fund all of these types of projects. It's sort of a chicken and egg, because we want to get feedback from you all on getting that project plan together, but also we want to make sure that when we're ready to go, and it does take time with CARB. And so one of the things and now hearing that great update from Steve, we'll connect again with the city on maybe how to structure that so it's a solid plan that we put forth to CARB. And I think in conjunction, it sounds like, again, at this next meeting where we're going to kind of have like a set of options that we all vote on, maybe in conjunction with, hey, are we going to add some funding to this? I think would be a good way to make sure that CARB sees the full picture of what our next step is. Thanks, Steve, and thanks, Gustavo.
Thank you all. And Bianca, thank you for being so patient. Go ahead.
Sorry, I have a question in regards to these programs, especially like Gustavo was mentioning, the priority I know it does have to go, it's half and half, but these companies that are receiving all this amount of money, it's extremely high money, are not even in the table to even present their case. And here we are with community members fighting every month, trying to make their incentive projects visible, and we're not seeing no outcome. Like we've had this conversation about the filtrations since before school started, because essentially it was for the schools, but because of COVID funding, it was going to be transferred to it. So it's been a whole year, a whole year, and we still haven't seen any outcome. But when big polluters need their money, it's like done and deal. It's gone, and it's gone before it's even posted for residents to view. So like the nut harvesters, it didn't take that long. It was already, the money was gone before we even knew it. And that's why those are the frustrations that are happening. And I've seen in Annabelle's and other ladies having this frustration because they haven't seen any outcome. I know we did have a lawnmower, and I did, and hearing you, Jessica, saying like, these are not the high polluters. But essentially when we started the whole process, it was a form of pollution. And that's why there was money allocated for that. So these projects that we were hoping to be sent out for residents to participate, to have involvement, have not been accomplished from the start. So I think before giving any money for polluters that are polluting the community, like big hard industries, before doing that, at least give us at least 2 or 3 projects, because we can't see any more funding going out to big companies and nothing coming to the community. It's just a comment and a question for the air district if they're up for it.
And maybe I'll use that to, yes, to your point. So the school air filtration piece, and I'll kind of share my screen now. Maybe I'll really briefly, but I will answer all of your question, Bianca, but I'm going to use your question, kind of launch us into the rest of some of the presentation, because I think it helps answer. And just talk a little bit about timelines for spending the funding, because it kind of helps us with the rest of our discussion today. And just thinking about how we do, and to all of your points, there is a sense of urgency that we as an air district need, that the folks that help take advantage and are going to be participating in the incentives programs need, that we as a group need when it comes to outreach and partnerships, and just kind of highlighting some of the high level type projects of when we need to start doing them in order to make sure that they happen before the SERP ends. Essentially, you can see here, and one of the things I failed to add here is that within this kind of time region, so really within the next year, this includes those bike and road projects, because those do take some time. But essentially you can see here, without going into the details, because I know we're running up a little bit on time, and I definitely want to have a robust discussion on what Bianca just mentioned. This is an outline for you all that we're going to start sharing at every meeting, just to remind us where we're at. So we're over here on the timeline, and as we move this way, we'll start letting you know how much time we have left to make sure we get some of these projects going. So when we talk about heavy duty, we're talking about trucks and buses. When we talk about air filtration, and light duty, we're talking about passenger vehicles. This is over here is more like the things like the fireplace replacement and lawn and garden. So you can see that different things take different amounts of time. And to Bianca's point, we need to start helping move forward the resident-based ones, the ones where residents can, oops, I'm not sharing my screen. You guys are all very patient with me just talking to myself. So really, now that I'm sharing my screen, this is a timeline, and I was talking about being on the left side, meaning being all the way over on this side, and how as we move forward in time in the next several months, we need to start making sure we're funding these bigger projects. Some of the projects like urban greening and vegetative barriers, should we choose to fund it. And like I was saying before you saw my screen, this also includes like the projects with the city and the county. really over the next few months or next few quarters. So this is about a year's worth of time. We need to get those projects going. Some of the other projects we definitely need to get going. These are just sort of the last drop dead is the kind of the term, last date by which we need to finalize these projects. This does not mean this is when we're going to do them. This means this is the last chance to fund them. Why I'm showing you this is because this is what we're going to use as we move forward on identifying our status with each of the projects in the SERP. Are we getting close to that deadline where we need to start maybe moving funding around? As you're going to see today, even though we're not super close to some of the deadlines, we already want to maybe start moving funding based on some of the feedback. And some of it is what Bianca just mentioned, and some of it's what I mentioned earlier about availability. So the first one I'm going to mention is the school air filtration project. As Bianca mentioned, we've talked about a couple times and we have some recommendations based on what we've heard. We are working and we've reached out to all of the schools individually within the boundary. We've reached out to everyone that gave us contacts for all the schools, and some of them have given us a little bit of feedback. But primarily it looks like, unless we hear from any one of you that knows differently, but it really does look like, as Bianca mentioned, that with CARES Act funding, many of the schools really throughout the country did use that funding to upgrade their systems and maybe no longer need the funding that's in this. And so there are options for this CSC to consider and part of the discussion today. If there's something that the school needed to do in order to take advantage, that could be part of it. But in reality, what we've kind of heard from you all is if we move the funds to the indoor air filtration for residents, perhaps that's what we want to do. And there's a slide a little bit later on what that could look like and what that measure could do. Gus, go ahead.
Yeah, just quickly, is there a possibility maybe to get a quick assessment or a quick gauge on the schools to see if they no longer need this, and then kind of gives them a sense of to the community of, this has already been accomplished through other venues, and so allocating it to like residential would seem just natural, right?
Right. Yes. So that is what we're in the middle of now. Just to be fully transparent, we have not gotten a lot of responses. I understand it. It's been probably a couple, and maybe I'm looking at Zong. It's probably almost 2 months now that we started this process where we reached out to schools. We sent out an assessment to Gus's point. We followed up with phone calls and try to connect with every school site. And so we can take, to Gus's point, we're looking for direction from you all. Do we want to maybe work on this another couple months before we move funding? I've kind of heard a couple different things. I agree, just from a process standpoint, it would be really nice as a committee, right, to know 100% of what is actually happening so we can be certain that the schools don't need this funding. So we're happy to continue to assess and even engage with you all. I know some of you have school contacts, that is who we've reached out to, but maybe you can help us on the ground. But definitely looking for direction from you all. We're happy to move the funds or hold and continue to assess whatever the committee wants. Go ahead, Gustavo.
Just a comment. I think in prior meetings, I believe it was their district, a air district rep, that I think in your contacts to the schools, I think it was mentioned that the schools got funds from the COVID impact fund from the feds, and with that they will not need the funds from 617. If that's the case, I think transferring, we will need to vote, but transferring these funds for homes filtration, I think that would be great, especially that if we are starting to to see that time is coming and we need to implement SERPs, I think and that's also something that I've been hearing from residents, that they will love to have that, for homes. So it may be good to act sooner than later to transfer this to benefit the residents.
So yes, to your point, we did hear that the schools got the CARES Act funding. Some of the questions we heard from the CSC is wanting to know what the school district did with it to make sure that it met the same sort of like, will it filter the air the same way? Will it still protect kids from outside air pollution? And so that's what we were trying to assess. We are certainly, though, if folks are satisfied with knowing that the school district got CARES Act funding to upgrade their school systems, then we're happy to move forward. But I will say in particular, we haven't heard, I don't think, at least from our recent outreach in the past couple months, a solid answer on like what type of air filtration system they got. So I wouldn't be comfortable telling you, yep, they got the best air filtration system ever. They don't need us, you know what I mean? So we're happy to take direction from you all. It does, you know, feel a little bit like we might have some funding from the locomotive switchers to move. If we want to move that and still assess the schools, that could be part of that as well. I don't know if that makes sense, but I think in some of our like recommendations we take from you all, we're happy to look elsewhere for funding and keep this one, you know, keep assessing and working with partners as we, you know, find out more information. Go ahead, Lisa.
So as far as the schools, was that like 2 or 3 meetings ago? And I, you know, of course I want the kids to have good filtration, but if they already have it, can we move to things like we've talked about, maybe the preschools getting it? I know there's this chapter youth center, and I know that there's people in our community that are in need that need it in their homes. Can we give the schools maybe a deadline or something so that we can get that funding? Because I know we're on a timeline.
Yep.
And I would hate to have the community lose this money.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, we are happy to do that. And if there's no, I don't know if you have a recommendation on a deadline, but we're happy to say in a month, if we don't hear any, a month or whatever recommendation from you all, we're happy to provide that. And if you all have a recommendation that you can just generally give us a thumbs up on today, we can give that deadline to schools and move this forward as quickly as possible. Does a month seem reasonable to people? Yeah, especially I will confirm 100% it's been a couple since we started reaching out. So if we say by July, I can't even do math on what date we're in, what month we're in, by July 14th, if we do not hear affirmatively that they need the funding to do what they need to do, we'll just assume they don't need it and we'll assess next steps with you all.
Okay, I saw a lot of thumbs up, so
Cool.
it sounded like consensus.
Awesome.
All right, Bianca, go ahead.
I know that I wanted to agree what Linda was saying about allocating some funding. Initially, when we started talking about this school filtration, it did not provide this filtration for daycares and for smaller children, preschool and things like that. So I was wondering if that does happen, do we have to outreach to those daycares or the daycares have to apply? How would you be able to reach out to those kind of facilities? That's just a question.
Assuming that's how, and I'll Scott and Todd remind me, assuming that's how, assuming we can go straight to daycares or if we need to work with CARB on official approval, either way, in terms of outreach, it would be both. They would have to go through our application, right? But we would definitely do a direct outreach to them.
We actually would need, it would need an adjustment to our approved, well, it's an approved category. So it would need a project plan if we were going to do anything other than K through 12 schools.
I see nodding from Scott, so it seems like CARB agrees.
And oh, sorry.
Oh no, Scott, I was just going to actually comment, Bianca. Sorry to interrupt you. This is Scott Wall with the Air Resources Board. Just the other thing I was thinking is, you know, I'm hearing, I guess, numerous ideas, and Todd, if I'm misspeaking, please correct me, but I'm hearing different ideas like, you know, different types of homes where maybe there's folks that are dealing with health challenges and this and that. And so I think obviously you'd want to get all of those ideas together into kind of one centralized spot and have one project plan versus one project plan for daycares, one for homes, one, it'd be much more efficient, I think, to get that piece figured out as priorities for the community before asking the district to bring a project plan to CAR.
Yeah, I think you're 100% correct. I think, what we're doing now, we're gathering all these great ideas. And once we make the final determination that, yes, we want to shift away from the traditional pre-approved school air filtration program, compile all those ideas and do exactly what you're saying, Scott, put them all into a centralized project plan, get them all approved, and then we can go from there. I think that's the way to go. Yeah.
I like it. So just for Carter and Company's notes, one action item for the district is to give that hard deadline to schools. Another is this is all in accordance with all the things we already heard about vegetative barriers, is to come up with some really key, solid recommendations for the committee to make a final decision on at the next meeting regarding funding and kind of direction on these new projects.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that.
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I have a question. So if for home filtration, would they have a requirement for residents to apply? And if so, can they also add for sensitive receptors or people that are dealing with respiratory problems? Because I know that right now the season is really high, the allergies are really crazy. So having that extra protection will help residents deal with these problems.
So I think the great part about this is that all of those ideas can be considered. Since we're going to be writing a project plan from scratch, essentially, all of those sorts of concepts and ideas can be included in the project plan. And it's really, at the committee's discretion on how you'd like to see the program operate. We have some ideas on ways that we think we could, facilitate it, but all of those priorities would definitely be captured in the new project plan moving forward.
I just want to make sure that answered your question, Bianca.
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right. I just want to do a quick time check. It is 6:35 and we do have a guest, Rachel from Cal EPA, who will be doing a brief introduction. And I just want to give enough time. So is it okay with everybody if we move forward with the agenda? Just a quick thumbs up, or go ahead.
I share one last slide, and it's really just sort of to compile a little bit of all other things we've heard. One of what you're going to see is a little preview of, or it sounds like summary of our discussion already. It's my last slide, but we will have all those action items. This last slide is just another one of the things we heard. Of course, this residential air filtration, it sounds like maybe this is, if no longer needed from school air filtration, we can assess moving it directly to residential air filtration. Again, working with the CSC and CARB and our board to kind of see what this looks like. So we already had it in our slides. I think we anticipated this discussion today. And this will be based off of the direction at the next meeting. And then this is just food for thought, since we do want to move on. But one of our concepts that we can decide on next meeting was to, we've heard this from other committees, but to make sure that we get 100% coverage when we replace fireplaces. So not to start a whole new topic, but just to give you a little preview, our up to $3,000 right now technically does not cover 100% just based on the cost. And so for some folks, especially low income folks in disadvantaged communities, that extra, maybe it's about $3,500 we're finding on average for kind of those entry level natural gas devices. That extra $500 is a lot for a low income household. And so how do we make sure that we get more? Well, maybe one of the other ways we can use some of the funding we've discussed today is to increase this incentive. So just food for thought, some of the discussion we'll have at the next meeting where we outline exact options, and we'll get all those options out to you ahead of the meeting so you can kind of review them. So I'll stop sharing and just thank you. Oh, I see Bianca. I'll take Bianca's question, but before we take it, I'll just thank you all for this engagement. This has been super helpful for us, and I think our next meeting is going to be really productive.
In allocating more money for the fireplace, is there going to be a specific place in the application? If you're a low income household, you'll get an extra incentive, or is it all around for the program?
So right now there's a low income option for like not 617, not hotspot is what we call it, communities. This is for 617 because it's a selected specific disadvantaged community. It would be the same for any resident that lived in that boundary.
Okay, thank you.
And I just wanted to address Linda's question in the chat, which was, it disappeared. Which measures are we moving funds from? And Linda, I don't know if you want to add or
so
just
go ahead, and I can anticipate, but Linda, go ahead if you had more clarification.
Well, I was just curious. I know this, we've gone different directions here. So you had put some items up, and so I didn't know if the group had actually made decisions on which ones we're going to cut funding, because I know we talked about the air filtration, we're going to do a month, but are there others that we can go through really quickly so we can start moving funding? Because it sounds like some of these we're going to have to write program plans, and I know those seem to take a long time.
The other one that I suggested, sorry, in the beginning, and I think you're right, we didn't quite finish the conversation, but we'll get final direction at the next meeting as well, is to the locomotive switchers. That $4.1 million could be a source of funding for a variety of things. And so those were the two suggestions that we had. And you're right, it wasn't super clear because we kind of ended up skipping through some slides. So that at the next meeting, we will, and just make that decision. As a group, we can provide some information and see if the group is comfortable making that decision about moving funding from locomotive switchers and from school air filtration, and then to some of the varieties that we've heard. And maybe at that meeting, we make some decisions, but we don't, move all the funding. We can kind of keep this iterative, but we'll set up all of those talking points for you all to make that decision so you can view them ahead of time. And then during the meeting, we can have that kind of.
During that time, can we say if we take, I think it was 4 million, and say if we only take like 2 million out of the rail cars, can that go to sidewalks or something? Can we make that decision at that meeting so we can get that going?
That could be part of that, like one of those options. Sure. That's what I've heard already today. Yeah. I heard sidewalks, and we have all the notes from Harder. I heard sidewalks potentially. I heard vegetative barriers potentially, bike lanes, kind of sidewalks, bike lanes as one. I've heard residential air filtration, and then the natural gas fireplaces.
We have more hands. Oh, thank you. Go ahead, Gustavo.
Yeah, can we add to the action items or list, maybe for the Air District to outreach to growers that got funds for tractors and see if they are interested in planting the barriers on their properties?
We can try. I don't know that we'll have, probably not by the July meeting, a chance to reach out to all the growers and do kind of all of the other action items. But I do think that's an action item for sure to bring to a meeting, is kind of start that assessment. But I just want to set expectations and know that I don't think that can happen between now and the July meeting. But I do, Gustavo, think that that's one of the creative discussions we need to have. And we can put it just on our action items for an upcoming meeting.
Yeah, and I don't know if you have the data to maybe target those growers that have properties or have operations near the residential areas or near routes. Maybe not all are, neighbors to a route or neighborhoods, but if you have that data, that may be easier, that you don't have to outreach to each and every one.
Yeah, no, we definitely have we have data that we can do that. That's a good point, of targeted outreach. So thank you, Gustavo.
All right, Bianca.
Can we have a dateline of of when the air district is going to reach out to growers, because if we let it be, we might be here for a whole year and nothing has moved. So I was wondering if the air district would want to have a deadline to outreach to these growers in making the green barriers possible. Another question that I do have, I know I've been out for a good minute, but I was wondering what is happening right now with the pesticide notification, and has that money been moved, or is it still there? What's going on at the moment? I just wanted to see if I could get an update.
That's a great question. So the pesticide notification, I know we'll hear an update if we get a chance time-wise. If not, we're happy to send out another reminder. If there is I don't want to steal thunder, but there's a DPR public engagement opportunity. There's sort of 3 different opportunities to be involved, and that's something we've sent out to you all, and we will also send out on Wednesday once more. We're going to do kind of another reminder email. To Bianca's point, though, there is incentives funding in the SERP, and it has not been moved. It is there, and so that could be a part of the discussion too, if we wanted to move that, since there is already a statewide piece, and maybe that's just to put a pin and not start a whole new topic. Maybe harder. We can also, as an action item, is one of the things we can discuss in the future is that 125,000 that's allocated right now in the SERP for that. Kind of discuss next steps.
Okay, perfect. We will definitely note that. So with that, thank you all for being so engaged today. Great. I will move forward with standing updates, and we'll start with the community air monitoring update. We have Chai.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Yeah, just a brief update. As you may already know, we have been working with Dora Hernandez, and she's gracious, has given us opportunity to explore monitoring on one of her properties just north of the park, or the Pocket Park, to be Pocket Park on Martinez Street. So we've been able to get an electrician out there to look at the feasibility of getting electrical power out there. And it looks like it's possible. It's going to require a lot of work, trenching and all of that, but it's definitely something that's possible. So we are in the process of getting 2 more quotes, and once we get those quotes, we can make a final decision and get that process started. So hopefully we can get some air monitoring there, as it's been taking a while for the Kern County location. And also wanted to let you all know that you've seen some of the emails, traffics, or updates about the DMV air monitoring site. We've been experiencing some technical difficulties there, and sometimes we fix it, and then it seems like everything's working, then later on it goes off again, just like this past weekend, it went out again, and we just fixed it again. What it appears to be is, from the heat, there's maybe a lot of electric consumption there, and that's causing some issues. So we're looking into that, but it's back up again, and we'll continue to keep an eye on it and make sure that location is up and running. And that's it for my update. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
I am not. Oh, Bianca, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I missed the monitor. What are you monitoring? The Mexican colony?
PM25.
Okay, and no ozone or anything like that, or is it just it's only for PM2.5?
It's only for PM25 right now, and that's how when we first developed the community air monitoring plan, that was the decision for that location. And again, ozone is more of a regional issue, and so it was decided that PM25, and based on all the concerns, PM25 was a concern on that area, so that was what was selected.
And if it's possible to expand it to PM5, can they also do it?
Oh,
I know
no.
it's more.
So it is. Oh, you mean beyond PM2.5?
Yes.
Well, I think another thing to look at is, we've been having the van monitoring in that area for quite some time. So just looking at that, I think, and that does have a bit more pollutants we can see in there. Now, again, if there's other, if you see that, or anybody sees that there's other concerns there, that's something that we can definitely explore. But right now, it seems like, I think the area is, the main concern is with the PM2.5. But again, that's up to the CSC, and as you know, we get different data, we see different things going on, or if you see any other things that are going on that requires other types of pollutants to monitor, then yeah, we could definitely explore those options.
I wondered too if I can offer, since it's been, I think we did it a couple meetings ago, and next meeting sounds like it's going to be really robust. I wonder if we make our following meeting, we have a more comprehensive update from Chai's team that shows us that data recently. Yeah. That way we can kind of understand, touch base again. It's been a little bit to talk about where the ozone monitor is, the difference between all of the different PM2.5 areas we're monitoring. And maybe to your Chai's great update, maybe by then we'll have it worked out with Dora to have that monitor placed.
Any other questions? Okay, I'm not seeing anything, so we'll move on to DPR, and I apologize in advance. I heard it pronounced earlier, Maziar. Okay, the floor is yours.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me here today. You're used to seeing Min, but Min is not in today, so I'm covering for him for this meeting. Not much update from DPR. The only thing that I wanted to bring up to everyone's attention is the notification pilot project. I know it's not for Kern County, but as you all know, there are 4 counties that are piloting this project. And as we always mention in this meeting, there are opportunities for your involvement. I'm going to share the link and all the information in the chat. Just let me do that at the moment. Even if you are not in those community, you can sign up to receive those notifications. That would help you to see what is being practiced. So if you have any comment, if you have any feedback, you can provide those feedback to those community, knowing that those information will be used for the statewide notification. So basically, whatever comment that you can provide, that would be used for the entire state. There are workshops at the end of this month, June 27, June 28, and June 29. I put all of those dates there, and also the agenda that they have. That's the opportunity to get involved and provide any feedback that you might have. And that's the only update that I have from DPR.
Thank you. Any questions? Bianca?
I wanted to make sure that residents do know that tomorrow is the Kern County Board of Supervisors meeting and talking about the pesticide notification. I know it's in regards to the Arvin and Lamont, but in some supporting others is a good cause. So I wanted to make sure that if somebody from the Air District or from the facilitating, if they could give that information for residents to know that there's going to be an opportunity to speak to the Board of Supervisors in regards to the notification, the pesticide notification.
We can drop some information in about the Arvin Lamont hearing at the Board of Supervisors. Thanks, Bianca.
Thank you, Jess. You read my mind. I was going to ask you that exact question. Thank you for that update, Bianca and Maziar. I'm going to pass it to Scott from CARB.
Words you actually want to hear. There are no updates from CARB this evening.
Thank you. All right, and with that, I'll pass it to Cal EPA Oil and Gas Task Force, and that's Rachel. Thank you so much for your patience.
Hi there, I'm Rachel Zwillinger, and thank you for having me here today. My role is Assistant General Counsel for Enforcement at the California Environmental Protection Agency, and I wanted to share a little bit about what we are up to in the oil and gas space in one particular area, and to hopefully have an opportunity to give you sort of a deeper dive on some of our work at a future meeting. And particularly, I want to give a little overview of our oil and gas enforcement task force that Cal EPA has been spearheading for a couple of years now, to see if you're interested in a more detailed presentation at a future meeting. It sounds like July is very busy, but perhaps August could work. And so as a little bit of background in this space, Cal EPA since 2013 has had an environmental justice task force. And Cal EPA is sort of an umbrella agency that hosts several boards and departments underneath us, including several folks who are here today, the Air Board, the Department of Pesticide Regulation, Water Board, Department of Toxic Substances Control, and Cal Recycle. And the Environmental Justice Task Force is an effort to focus the enforcement resources of all of the boards and departments within Cal EPA to focus enforcement efforts on reducing pollution burdens in communities that are disproportionately burdened by pollution. In 2019, we identified sectors that are particularly of concern for environmental justice communities from the feedback that we were hearing, and created enforcement initiatives focused on those particular industries and sectors. And oil and gas was one of our 4 focal sectors. And then within the oil and gas enforcement sector initiative focused on oil and gas, the first geographic region that we selected to work in was Kern County. And so with wonderful collaboration from the Air District and CARB and others, we brought together a bunch of different agencies that regulate oil and gas facilities and conducted inspections of more than 20 facilities in Kern County to make sure that the facilities are complying with all of the environmental regulations that apply to those oil and gas facilities. And if you all are interested in learning more about this effort and the sort of enforcement work that's happening in this space, and hopefully providing some feedback on how we'll go about doing this as well, we'd love to join you with staff from some of those participating boards and departments for a future meeting to have sort of a deeper dive conversation. The things that I think I would be interested in sharing, if it's of interest to you, are one, sort of which agencies participated in this enforcement effort and are doing enforcement in the oil and gas space, and what roles does each agency play? So what does CARB do, the Air District, the Water Board, CalGEM, all of these different agencies that are working in the oil and gas space? What are their role? What enforcement work are they doing? Then to share what facilities we focused on in your area for these inspections and why we selected these particular facilities. And then hopefully also some of the outcomes of our inspections and what we found through these multimedia, multi-agency inspections. And that part of a presentation might be more limited because there are ongoing enforcement efforts that came from some of these inspections. And so there are limitations on what could be shared, but I hope that there will be at least some initial information on what came out of these inspections. And I think more broadly, it's my hope that this presentation could be a starting point for, continued engagement with you all, because I think we plan to continue working on this cross-media enforcement effort in Kern County. And we want to make sure that we're focusing our enforcement efforts on facilities that are concerning for residents. And so as a part of this, we're really interested in hearing feedback on what we've done so far and how we can make sure that we are ensuring compliance at the facilities that are most concerning for residents.
We have a question. Go ahead, Bianca.
I know you were mentioning about facilities that are polluters, but how about industry that have had polluting our air quality for many, many years and are not taking responsibility. I know I'm not supposed to be doing this, but we've had this discussion multiple times with DPR not taking the lead on enforcing the Ag Commissioner to comply to the requests that residents have been doing over the years. So I was wondering, does the EPA have to do something to make DPR comply to the residents' request, or what do we have to do in these circumstances?
I would definitely say sort of reaching out to folks at Cal EPA and at DPR is appropriate if you're not getting responses that you need. And hopefully, we have staff that are engaging in forums like this and elsewhere so that we're able to understand concerns and follow up appropriately. There's also, I know from DPR has its own complaint system, the Casper app, that can be used for submitting complaints. And then Cal EPA has a complaint system that you can find on our website where if there are issues that come up or if you're not receiving responses from the regulatory entity, that's an opportunity to submit a complaint and then allows people at various levels to see what's happening and follow up. So I would definitely encourage, if you don't already have access to those, I can try to pull it up quickly and share. But there's definitely, an interest and desire to make sure that all parts of Cal EPA are responding.
That's a problem that we've had for a very long time. And we've even actually knocked at the door of Jerry Blumenfield and letting him know like what's going down in the ground and letting him, and for him to understand that we've gone to every door, we've gone to even to the Board of Supervisors for the Ag Commissioner to comply on what we've been requesting for part of one of these SERP measures that the AB617 was doing. When we were working on it, Carb had mentioned whatever we wanted, we were going to try to address it. Whoever was going to be responsible of any of the SERPs, Carb and the EPA were going to be held responsible, but yet, as I'm mentioning, like the pesticide notification, we have not seen any changes. One individual is the one that's holding this process back, and we've had multiple conversations with DPR where they told us like, is there any alternative that we could do? And it's like, why are you giving us option B if what we've been asking for all this time is to have a pesticide notification? I know that there's money allocated for a statewide, but it's not something that residents are happy about. There's already a process out there here in Kern County, and we're trying to mimic this process to become into the Shafter community, but EPA has not done their job. DPR has not done their job. CARB hasn't done their job. So who else can we rely on if nobody from the state agency has complied to what their mission statement is, to protect our health and our family's health?
Yeah, I understand that and hear that. And, I will talk with others and try to better understand what's happening with the pesticide notification space. And so I definitely hear those concerns.
Jess, I saw you on mute. Did you have something to add?
Nope. That was perfect. Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you so much for bringing that up, Bianca, and elevating that for the rest of the team. I know you have been working on that with others on the CSC. So thank you for just speaking up and saying that. Do we have any other questions for Rachel?
I'm wondering, Jess, did we feel, or Rachel, can we gauge if there's a thumbs up that we want Rachel to come back kind of with that support for another broader discussion? I see Bianca.
Can we have a follow-up with our question? Well, with my question for the next time that you come over and see where everything's at right now?
Yeah, so I mean, the conversation that I had been flagging was focused in the oil and gas space. And that's sort of the space where I am working and could pull together folks to sort of have a conversation about what we're doing in the oil and gas enforcement space. On the pesticide notification space, I'm happy to have a follow-up conversation. It's not sort of within my purview, and so I would need to find the appropriate people for that conversation. But I can definitely follow up internally and get a better sense of who is engaging in that space.
That answer.
Yeah, and and I don't want to take your time if this is not something that is of interest or doesn't feel relevant to hear about the enforcement in the oil and gas space. But we would very much like to join you if it is interesting and relevant as a part of this discussion.
I wonder if we kind of have sometimes like a running list of things we need to talk about at future meetings. I wonder if we just add, if everyone's okay with this, we add this to that list. And then as we set our agendas, which will give hopefully Rachel and her team plenty of time, we can start to understand, okay, maybe August this point works, or we just kind of keep it on a running list and maybe we get more quick updates until there's a need or a desire for longer updates. And just appreciate that Rachel introduced us to the concept and is willing to provide whatever time we all feel is necessary. So I think maybe that's what we'll do, Rachel, if that works for you.
Yeah, that sounds great to me.
Awesome.
And sort of as interest arises, we're happy to be here and come and are really interested in hearing feedback about facilities that are particularly of concern.
And Rachel, do you have any materials to leave behind? Because I think the other piece is the community continually asks for sort of capacity building opportunities. So maybe folks aren't thinking of the questions to ask you because they need a little bit more context and reading. So I don't know if you can point us to some resources that we can distribute out to the community so that folks can start to accumulate the questions that they might have for you.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I don't yet, because this is very much a work in progress with sort of active investigations and enforcement efforts that are in the works. But as a part of this, we would put together slides that would provide an overview of what the different agencies are doing, what facilities we focused on, some of the findings. And so I can work to pull that together and share that in advance of any presentation. And perhaps that could be helpful in gauging interest in a further discussion.
Thank you so much. I think that would be extremely helpful if folks agree.
Yeah, great. That's a good idea.
Just to ask a follow-up question, will those also be available in Spanish? Just for.
Yes, I can figure out how to do that.
Okay, perfect. Just because we want to be equitable here. Thank you so much. Yeah. Perfect. So it sounds like, yeah, we'll keep it on the agenda in some way, shape, or form and prepare the CSC with some information so they can ask follow-up questions and be engaged when the time comes to have you back for a full presentation or just for check-ins. So that sounds great. Thank you so much, Rachel. I don't see any other questions for you.
Okay. Great. Thank you all for your time tonight.
Thank you. All righty. So thank you all for your patience. Next, we are going to do wrap up and next steps. Let me share my screen. Okay, perfect. So our next agenda setting meeting is Monday, June 20th, 2022 at 3 p.m. And we are still doing those via Zoom. Zong does send out the link for those. And then for the next CSC meeting, we'd like to have a conversation with the CSC regarding that date. Go ahead, Jess.
And I think maybe given all the actions that we have, I think that date should still stand. Our original proposal to you all, but we're happy to take direction. Our original proposal was going to be, since a lot of folks take some time off in the summer, to postpone that meeting. But we do have a lot to move forward with. So unless there's objections, we'll just make our next meeting our regular scheduled meeting, which would be the July, I'm looking at my calendar. It would be the July 11th meeting. So if there are no objections, it's just our regular meeting. We were going to see if folks wanted to move it, but I think there's a lot to cover between now and the July and August meeting based on today's meeting. And so we're just going to keep that unless y'all want to move it.
Okay. Does anybody want to move the July meeting?
Nope, I see no's.
Okay. Perfect.
When would we be moving it? Like not in July or just a different date in July? I'm sorry, I didn't understand that.
I mean, our original proposal was going to be to not have that meeting and have our next meeting be August. Or we could move it if folks are interested. It was just to kind of give folks some space, given that we've been meeting a lot and have a lot going on. We did a similar thing in other communities, but it sounds like we have a lot and I saw some no's, so we'll keep our July 11th meeting.
But just to confirm, any objections on keeping the meeting?
I'm not seeing anything. And nothing in the chat, just Gus saying he'll be around on 7/11.
Cool, 7/11, what a fun date.
Okay, perfect. So it sounds like we will keep our July 11th meeting and have all of those fun updates for everyone so everybody can come and be engaged. All right, last on the list is public comment. And let me just share my screen again as quickly as I can. Okay, so public attendees on Zoom, please raise your blue hand to ask questions or make a comment. If you're on the phone, press *9, or you may also type in the chat. Public attendees on Facebook, or you can leave your message on Facebook, or you can email ab617@valleyair.org. Type your question or comments in there, or alternatively, public attendees on YouTube. And at this time, I'm just going to check with the team to see if there are any comments on YouTube from the public. Okay.
No, there are not.
Thank you so much, Laura. And with that, I'm going to pass it to my team, Amy and Laura, to go over the action items for today.
Okay, thanks, Jessica. Let me go ahead and share my screen. You'll all see that. Yes.
Here we go.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, trying to make it big. Okay, so again, for these action items, if something's misworded or if you want to edit these, let me know and we can go ahead and do that as we're running through these. And we may have missed some. I know there were a lot of action items today and it was a very engaging conversation. So if we did, please go ahead and let us know. And yeah, I'll go ahead and start reading. So first action item is co-develop a map of where trees will be planted to identify priority areas and ensure urban greening provides maximum value, at least in public spaces. Second one is develop an inclusive process for collecting feedback on urban greening incentives measures. And that is all. And the first one was AD with CSC. I'm sorry, I forgot to include that. Third one is develop a highly visually graphic representation of emissions mitigation plans, emissions reductions, and primary sources of pollution. And that will be the AD, your district. By July 14th, if Air District does not hear affirmatively from local school districts that they need funding for air filtrations, Air District will assume they don't need funding and assess with committee on how to move forward with funds. And that would be Air District with the committee. Fifth one is develop a targeted outreach plan for growers to have them potentially support the implementation of vegetative/green barriers. That's the AD. During the July CSC meeting for number 6, the committee will discuss where to move incentive funding based on prioritization and allocation of SERP measures, and that is everyone. For number 7, the CSC members will review draft community meeting agreements and bring recommendations for a vote at the next meeting. For number 8, Air District develop a comprehensive overview of air monitoring locations, results, and general updates to present at future CSC meetings. And Cal EPA will join future meetings to discuss oil and gas enforcement. When giving a presentations, it will send materials ahead of time in English and Spanish. Is there any edits, anything we may have missed, or are we all okay with these action items?
I'm not seeing any hands or any comments.
I'll go ahead and stop sharing. And if you, if any of you come up with anything, you can also email us or the Air District.
Thank you so much, Laura. That is our meeting for today. Thank you again for your time and your engagements. And Jessica, I'll pass it to you.
I just will echo Jessica's thank you comments, because it really was a really engaging meeting. We have a lot of feedback, and we will set us up nicely to have a really structured conversation to make decisions at our next meeting. We're really excited about it, and I assure you we will leave next meeting with some decisions made. There might still be some decisions folks want to talk about, but we will move a lot forward, and that includes moving funding to some of these priority projects and getting them going. We heard you loud and clear, and we definitely want to keep things moving forward. We know it's been a long process, and some of these things do take process, and so we just appreciate you being patient and also appreciate you pushing us. So thank you, and have a really great night.
Thank you.